I want to start off by saying I've never believed in the paranormal. Ghost stories always seemed like exaggerated tales meant to scare kids, and I never gave them a second thought. But after what happened to me last summer, I don't know what to believe anymore. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. My house is on the outskirts, backed by a stretch of dense forest. It's peaceful, quiet, until it wasn't. It started in early June. I'd come home late from work and was unwinding in my living room when I heard a sound outside. Not a typical rustle of leaves or a distant coyote howl, but something deliberate. A crunch of footsteps on gravel. I turned off the TV, sat up, and listened. Silence. Figuring it was probably a deer, I shrugged it off and went to bed. But the next night, it happened again. And then the next. At first, I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but then I noticed something that sent a chill through my spine. My backyard gate, the one I always kept locked, was ajar. Not wide open, just slightly unlatched, just enough that someone could slip through. I stood at my back door, staring at it, my pulse hammering. The thing was, I'd checked the gate the night before. I knew I had locked it. I grabbed a flashlight and hesitantly stepped outside, sweeping the beam over my yard. The night was still. Too still. The trees at the edge of the property swayed slightly in the wind, but there was no movement, no sound. Then I saw them. Footprints, barefoot, leading from the gate into the grass. They were deep, fresh. They went halfway across my yard, then stopped. No return tracks, no sign of anyone leaving, just nothing. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me as I backed toward my house. I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and sat in the living room with a baseball bat clutched in my hands. I barely slept. The next day, I installed a security camera facing the backyard. That night, I sat up late, watching the feed on my phone. At exactly 2:43 a.m., my screen glitched. Just for a second, static, then a black frame. When it came back, my blood ran cold. A man stood at the edge of my yard, tall, thin, dressed in what looked like tattered, dark clothing. His face wasn't visible. His head was tilted downward, shadowed. He stood perfectly still, just beyond the range of the camera's night vision clarity. Then, in a single frame jump, he was closer. Not walking, not moving gradually, just closer. Another glitch. Closer again. My heart pounded as I stared, unable to breathe. He was just a few feet from my back door now. Then, for the briefest second before the camera cut out completely, he looked up. I saw his face. It wasn't right. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes, they weren't normal. They were black, not just dark, but entirely black, like empty sockets. Then the feed died. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even move. I just sat there, heart racing, staring at my locked door, waiting for something, anything to happen. But nothing did. No noise, no footsteps, nothing. The next morning, I checked the camera. The footage was gone, wiped completely. I don't know how. I called the police. They came, looked around, but found nothing. No footprints this time. No signs of forced entry. Just an open gate. They dismissed it, said it was probably an animal triggering the camera. Technical glitch, they said. I know better. The following nights, nothing happened. No sounds, no movement, no open gates. And I thought maybe, just maybe, whoever or whatever it was had moved on. But last week, I was taking out the trash when I noticed something in the dirt near the trees. Footprints leading toward my house. But this time, they weren't leading away. And this time, they weren't barefoot. They were mine. But I hadn't been in the woods. I don't know what's happening. I don't know how it's happening. But I haven't slept since. And I don't think I ever will again. I don't think I'll ever feel safe in my own home again. Not after what happened last year. I was renting a small, single-story house just outside of town. It was nothing fancy, but it was mine. It had an old charm to it. Creaky wooden floors, a fireplace I never used, and a big attic that I never had a reason to go into. For the first few months, everything was normal, quiet. But then I started noticing small things. Things I could explain, but they didn't sit right. Food would go missing. Not whole meals, just little things. A slice of bread, half a banana, a spoonful of peanut butter. I lived alone, so I knew it wasn't a roommate sneaking bites. I blamed myself, thinking maybe I was forgetting how much I ate. Then it was my stuff. A book that wasn't where I left it. My TV remote on the floor when I was sure I left it on the couch. Clothes I hadn't worn in weeks showing up in my laundry pile. Again, I explained it away. You're just being forgetful. But then I started hearing things. Soft creaks in the night. Not the kind the house normally made, but something different. Rhythmic, deliberate, like footsteps, but slow. Careful. I told myself it was just the house settling, until one night, when I heard something that I couldn't explain. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard a door click, not loudly, just the faintest, softest sound. I bolted upright, my heart hammering. My bedroom door was closed. The front door was locked. I was sure of it. But then, the floor creaked, just outside my room. A single, slow step. I stopped breathing. My mind raced. Someone was in my house. I reached for my phone, but I had left it charging in the kitchen. My stomach dropped. I had nothing, no weapon, no way to call for help. Then, silence. I strained my ears, listening, waiting for another step, another sound, anything. But nothing came. After what felt like hours, I finally worked up the courage to move. I slid out of bed as quietly as possible, my hands shaking. I grabbed the only thing I could find, a heavy metal flashlight, and inched toward my bedroom door. I counted to 3 in my head, then yanked the door open and swung the flashlight wildly. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The front door was still locked. The windows were closed. I checked every room, every closet, under the bed. There was no one there, but I knew what I heard. The next morning, I convinced myself it had to be my imagination. I was sleep deprived, on edge. I was freaking myself out. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. A week later, I found out the truth. I had come home late and went into the kitchen to grab a drink. As I reached for a glass, I stopped. The attic door, it was open. Not all the way, just a crack. My chest tightened. I never used the attic. I had no reason to. And I knew for a fact that door had been shut. I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the dark gap. I thought I saw movement up there, the faintest shift, like someone shifting their weight. Then a sound, a breath, a long, slow exhale, barely audible but unmistakable. Someone was up there. I didn't stay to find out who. I ran. I didn't grab my keys, my phone, anything. I just bolted out the front door and didn't stop running until I reached my neighbor's house. The cops came. They searched the attic, and they found him, a man, dirty, thin, wearing clothes that weren't his. He had been living up there for months. There was a sleeping bag, food wrappers, water bottles, proof that he had been sneaking down when I wasn't home. And worse, there was a small hole in the attic floor, right above my bedroom. He had been watching me. I moved out that weekend. I haven't lived alone since, and I never will again.